The dress cost $4,000. Ivanka had paid for it herself. She stood in front of the mirror in the hotel suite Ethan had booked, supposedly for their 5th anniversary dinner, allegedly the grandest gesture of his love, and zipped it up without calling for help. The silk was white and silver, cold against her spine. Her reflection looked back at her, composed, unreadable. She had worn that face for months now. She knew about the affair on a Tuesday in February. She had found nothing dramatic, no lipstick on a collar, no perfume that wasn't hers. Just a bank transfer. 2 nights in a hotel suite she had never been invited to. The name on the second room? Chloe Johnson, her sister. Ivanka had not cried. She had opened a new notes file on her phone and started a list. Tonight the list was complete. She slipped pearl earrings in, slow and unhurried, and checked her phone one last time. A message from an unknown number. No text. Just a video attachment. She pressed play. 23 seconds. Ethan's hand in Chloe's hair. A hotel corridor. The same hotel they were standing in right now. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago. Ivanka closed the video. She dropped the phone in her clutch and smiled at her reflection. Here is something most people don't know. The human body produces cortisol, the primary stress hormone, but prolonged, controlled anger actually suppresses its release. The calmer a person appears under extreme betrayal, the more dangerous the neurological response building underneath. Downstairs, the ballroom hummed. 300 guests. Crystal chandeliers that threw fractured light across ivory tablecloths. Ethan's business partners, their wives, her mother seated at the center table in a burgundy dress she'd bought with money Ivanka had transferred to her last month. Ivanka walked in. Heads turned. They always did. She crossed the room and took her seat without glancing at Ethan. He stood near the bar in a black tuxedo, laughing too loudly at something his friend said. Chloe stood 4 feet away from him. Her dress was champagne. Her eyes tracked the door. Neither of them looked at Ivanka for more than 3 seconds. She counted. A waiter poured champagne she didn't touch. Her mother leaned across the table. "You look tired," her mother said. "I'm wonderful," Ivanka said. She watched Chloe adjust the strap of her dress. Watched Ethan catch Chloe's eye and hold it for exactly 1 beat too long. Watched her mother notice and say nothing. The chandelier above them threw cold light on all 3 faces. Hey lovelies, does Ivanka already know everything? Or is she still putting the pieces together? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you're new here and you're already feeling the tension, you know what to do. Hit subscribe. You do not want to miss what's coming. The MC tapped the microphone. The room quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to invite Mr. Ethan Cole to say a few words in honor of this evening. Ethan set down his glass and walked to the center of the room. He adjusted the mic with the practiced ease of a man who had rehearsed this moment. Ivanka kept her hands flat on the table. He began with the anniversary speech. The usual architecture of such things, gratitude, memories, how far they'd come. Several guests smiled. Her mother dabbed her eye. Ivanka waited. And then, Ethan reached into his jacket pocket. He did not look at Ivanka. He turned. He walked toward Chloe. The room did not understand for 3 full seconds. Then the understanding moved through the crowd like a current through water, slow at first, then everywhere, at once. Ethan dropped to 1 knee in front of Chloe. Complete silence. "I finally realized," he said, his voice clear and amplified, ringing off every surface in the room, "that I married the wrong sister." Chloe's hand flew to her mouth. The gasp from the crowd was instantaneous. 300 people inhaled together. Ivanka felt every eye in the room search for her face. She did not give them what they expected. Chloe stepped back, a half step, perfectly calibrated, the performance of a woman blindsided, reluctant, dragged into a love she had tried so hard to resist. Her eyes shone. She shook her head slowly. "I never wanted this," she said. "Ethan, please." But she didn't move away. A woman at the far table leaned to her husband and whispered something. He didn't whisper back. He was watching Chloe too closely. Because, whatever Chloe was performing, the audience was already ahead of it. They all knew exactly what she wanted. Ethan remained on 1 knee, the ring box open in his hand. A diamond that caught the chandelier. Ivanka recognized it. She had seen the charge on their joint account 6 weeks ago. She had taken a photograph. The room waited. Ivanka looked at her champagne glass. Then she laughed. It came out clean and unrestrained, the way laughter does when something is genuinely funny. Not nervous laughter. Not the sound of a woman breaking. Real, bright, almost delighted amusement. The room heard it and went cold. Her mother stared. Chloe's chin lifted. Ethan's knee didn't move, but his jaw tightened. Ivanka brought her fingertips to her mouth and let the laughter settle on its own terms. Then she reached for her champagne, took a slow sip, and set the glass back down. A 2022 study published in the journal Cognition found that laughter in high-threat social situations is not always a sign of distress. In many cases, it signals a neurological state of confidence, indicating the brain has already computed an exit strategy and classified the threat as resolved. The MC, visibly uncertain, cleared his throat near the stage. No one moved toward a microphone. The ballroom doors opened. Not dramatically. It just opened, the way doors do when someone pushes them from the other side. But the sound of it, the quiet, deliberate click of the latch, pulled every head in the room toward the entrance. A man walked in. He wasn't rushing. He moved through the doorway and into the chandelier light at a pace that suggested he had never been in a hurry in his life and didn't intend to start. Black suit, tailored close. Dark hair. Gray eyes that moved across the room once, efficiently, like a man cataloging exits. The tattoo at his collar was visible above his tie. Dark ink, geometric. Just the edge of something that ran much further beneath the fabric. He was Korean. Perhaps 28. Perhaps older. The kind of face that gave nothing. The room recognized the feeling of him before anyone knew his name. Conversations died. A waiter stopped mid-pour. 3 of Ethan's business partners exchanged glances that were not subtle. The man walked directly to Ivanka's table. He stood beside her chair, reached down, and lifted his jacket from his arm. He settled it across her shoulders, not roughly, not tenderly, just with the certainty of a man placing something where it belongs. Then he looked at the room. Sorry I'm late. His voice was low. It didn't need the microphone. Ethan was still on one knee. He was no longer looking at Chloe. One of the business partners near the bar, a heavy-set man named Gerald who had built his import firm on contracts he didn't discuss at dinner, put his glass down and took half a step back from the group. Because he had recognized the face. And Gerald knew what that face meant. The name moved through the room in whispers, passed between 2 people, then 4, then 10. Kim Song-yin. Ethan heard it. The color left his face. He was still on one knee. The ring box still open. Chloe's hand still raised to her mouth. But the room had already changed. The story had changed. The balance of every single thing in it had changed in the 12 seconds it had taken one man to walk from the door to a chair. Ivanka looked down at Ethan on the floor, unhurried, the jacket warm across her shoulders. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Lovelies. The moment Kim Song-yin walked through that door, whose side do you think he's on? Is this a rescue, or is this something else entirely? Leave your answer below. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you're going to regret it on the next scene. I promise you that. Gerald wasn't the only one who stepped back. For men did it. Separately. Without coordination. The way animals in a field all turn the same direction before the sound fully arrives. Kim Song-yin didn't acknowledge any of them. He pulled out the empty chair beside Ivanka and sat down. A waiter appeared at his elbow within seconds. Not because he called for one, but because the staff had clearly been briefed. The waiter set a glass of water in front of him and vanished. Ethan was still on one knee. It had been almost a full minute now. The ring box was still open. The diamond still caught the light. But the gesture had curdled. What was meant to be humiliation had become something else entirely, and Ethan's brain was visibly struggling to process the new information. Chloe lowered her hand from her mouth. She looked at Ivanka, then at Song-yin, then back at Ivanka. Something moved behind her eyes. The first real thing Chloe had shown all evening. Fear. Ethan finally stood. He closed the ring box, a small, clipped sound in the silence, and straightened his jacket. He forced a smile at the room. Old friend of the family, he said into the quiet. Casual. Explanatory. The tone of a man who needed the room to believe something. Nobody moved. Song-yin lifted his water glass and drank. He did not look at Ethan. He didn't need to. Not looking at a man in a room like this was its own statement. Ivanka watched Ethan realize that. Here is something most people don't know. Silence, weaponized deliberately in a social setting, activates the same neural threat response as a raised fist. The human brain cannot distinguish between physical danger and social annihilation. Both register in the amygdala as survival-level emergencies. The MC found his nerve somewhere and moved back to the microphone. He said something about dinner being served. The band started up low, unobtrusive, a little desperate. Slowly, In the way crowds reassemble after something they can't quite name, conversation began to return to the room. But it was different conversation now. Quieter. Pointed in one direction. Ethan made his way across the room with the careful walk of a man who had decided his best move was to appear unbothered. He stopped at the edge of Ivanka's table. Ivanka. His voice was controlled. A word. "I'm with a guest," she said. "It'll take a minute. So will dinner." She unfolded her napkin across her lap. "Sit down, Ethan." He didn't sit. He stood there for 4 seconds, long enough for 3 different tables to notice, and then he sat. He did not look at Songin directly. That told Ivanka everything about what Ethan knew and how afraid he already was. "Who is he?" Ethan said quietly. Not a question. The sentence structure of a man already past asking. Ivanka picked up her fork. "Kim Songin," she said. "I assumed you knew him, given that your import licensing contract runs through his holding company." The color that had returned to Ethan's face left again. Songin set his water glass down with the faint sound of crystal on linen. "Ethan Cole," he said. It was the first time he had spoken since arriving. The table went very still. "I've heard a lot about you," Songin said. His English was clean, unhurried, carrying the faint texture of someone who had learned the language in a place with real stakes. "Your wife speaks highly of your business instincts." He looked at Ethan then. Just once. Direct and brief, the way you look at a problem you've already solved. "She always has better judgment than people give her credit for." Ethan said nothing. Chloe had not come to the table. The dinner lasted 2 hours. Ivanka ate. She made conversation with a woman to her left, a property developer's wife named Margot, who asked 3 questions about the centerpiece flowers before giving up and talking about Tuscany instead. Songin spoke when spoken to, which was rarely, and each time with the same economy, a sentence, 2 at most, enough to answer without giving anything. Ethan moved around the edges of the room like a man trying to find the exit in a building where all the doors had been locked. At 9:30, Ivanka set her napkin on the table. She stood. The room did not go quiet this time, but it paid attention, that particular, charged attention that a room gives a woman it has spent 2 hours watching. She walked to the center of the floor. Not the stage. The floor, where guests could see her clearly, where there was no microphone to mediate what she was about to say. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said. Her voice carried without effort. Calm and clear, the way a voice is when the body underneath it isn't afraid. "I know some of you came expecting an anniversary dinner." She paused. "I need to make a small correction about what this evening actually is." Ethan stopped moving. 6 months ago, Ivanka said, "I discovered my husband had been conducting an affair with my sister. Not a brief one. Or a mistake. It was a deliberate arrangement that included shared hotel suites, joint financial planning." She let that land. "And the use of assets from our joint estate to fund it." The room was completely still. "I spent those 6 months doing 2 things. Her voice didn't change. "I gathered evidence. And I waited for the right audience." She looked at Ethan across the room. "You gave me 300 guests, Ethan. I appreciate that." Research from Stanford University found that people who delay confrontation in order to gather comprehensive evidence when legal disputes add nearly 3 times the rate of those who confront immediately on emotion. Patience in adversarial situations is not passivity, it is strategy. "Several of you in this room," Ivanka continued, "have business relationships with my husband. I want you to have accurate information before Monday morning." She reached into her clutch and removed a small USB drive. She held it up, not theatrically, just clearly, the way you hold something you want documented. "This contains bank records, hotel receipts, and communications between my husband and my sister spanning 19 months. It also contains documentation showing that the ballroom you are currently sitting in, the venue my husband booked for this evening, which he told his investors he owned outright, is leased property. The leaseholder is Songin Capital Group." From his seat, Songin did not look up. He didn't need to. Several guests turned toward the table where he sat. Gerald, the heavy-set import man, was already on his phone, turned away from the room, speaking low and fast into the receiver. Chloe moved toward Ivanka. "You planned this." Her voice was just above a whisper, tight with something she was trying to hold back. "You set this entire thing up. You proposed to him 1 month after your anniversary with Bruce," Ivanka said. "I simply waited until he proposed to you at mine." Chloe shook her head. Her jaw was tight. "This is insane. You're acting like we." "I have the messages, Chloe." Silence. "The ones where you told him I was boring. The ones where you told him I wouldn't fight for him." Ivanka's voice was steady. "Even. The ones where you told him I didn't deserve what I had. Chloe said nothing. You spent your whole life wanting what I had. Ivanka's eyes didn't waver. I know that. I have always known that. She tilted her head, just slightly. What I didn't know was how long Mum knew too. Chloe's eyes moved, fast, involuntary, to the center table, to their mother, who was sitting very still in her burgundy dress, her hands folded in her lap, looking at nothing. Ethan had not spoken since Ivanka stood up. He stood near the far wall, the ring box still in his jacket pocket, watching his life reconfigure in real time. Songin rose from his chair. He straightened his cuffs, unhurried, and crossed the room to stand beside Ivanka. Not in front of her, not behind her. Beside her. He looked at Ethan. Your licensing contract renews in 11 days, he said quietly. I'd clear your schedule. Ethan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Songin turned to Ivanka. Ready, he said. Almost, she said. She looked at the room one last time. 300 people, the chandelier light, her mother's folded hands, her sister's silent face, the ring box in the pocket of a man who had thought tonight was his. Then she walked toward the door. And every eye in that room followed her out. The corridor outside the ballroom was empty. Their footsteps on marble were the only sound. Ivanka walked without rushing. Songin matched her pace exactly, his jacket still across her shoulders, neither of them speaking until the ballroom doors had fully closed behind them and the muffled sound of 300 stunned people became something distant and irrelevant. A hotel attendant near the elevator looked up, registered Songin's face, and found somewhere else to be. They took the elevator to the 14th floor. Songin's suite. He had booked it 3 weeks ago. She knew this because she had asked him to. He poured water. She sat. The city spread itself through the floor-to-ceiling window, indifferent and bright. Gerald was on his phone before I finished speaking, Ivanka said. He'll call 2 people tonight. Both of them will call Ethan. Songin set a glass in front of her. It won't help him. The licensing contract is already flagged for review. He sat across from her. That part was always going to happen. Tonight just moved the timeline. Ivanka nodded. She turned the water glass once in her hand. The affair and the humiliation. That's personal, Songin said. I need you to separate that from what I'm about to tell you. She looked at him. The money that moved out of your joint estate, he said. 19 months of it. It didn't go to hotels. She was quiet. Some of it did. Enough to make the affair look like the full story. He opened a folder on the table. Clean pages, numbered. The rest was staged through 3 shell companies. 2 registered in Cyprus. 1 in Delaware. Ivanka looked at the documents. Real estate acquisitions. Transferred equity. Her signature on 2 of the documents. Her signature, her name, notarized. She had signed none of these. Shell companies in Delaware are legal and nearly invisible. Delaware law does not require the names of owners to be disclosed publicly, which is why over 60% of Fortune 500 companies and a significant number of financial fraud cases share the same state of registration. Chloe didn't have the access for this, Ivanka said. No. Ethan's smart, but he's not structured. He doesn't think in layers. She turned 1 page over, then another. Someone built this for him. Yes. She looked up. Who? Songin didn't answer immediately. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and turned the folder to a specific page near the back. A bank transfer. Domestic. Clean routing number. Legitimate account name. The account belonged to a private wealth management firm. The signatory on the originating transfer was a joint holder. Ivanka read the name twice. Her mother. Not as a victim. Not as an unknowing recipient. As an originating signatory. Authorizing movement. 19 months ago. 2 months before Ivanka had first noticed anything wrong. The room was very quiet. Ivanka set the page down. She did not say anything for a long time. Outside, the city kept moving. Sirens somewhere below, a plane crossing the window, the ordinary indifferent machinery of a world that did not pause for this. She knew before I did, Ivanka said. It looks that way. She sat across from me tonight. Her voice was flat. She dabbed her eye during his speech. Songin said nothing. He let it sit where it needed to sit. Ivanka straightened the page back into the folder. Neat. Aligned. You said someone bigger was involved. She closed the folder. Is it just her? Songin looked at her for a moment. No, he said. She slept 4 hours. Not because she couldn't sleep more, it was because there was too much to move through and her mind treated rest like a task to complete and then set aside. She was dressed by 6, coffee made, the folder open again on the suite's desk before the city outside had fully decided to be morning. Songin appeared at 7 with the second file. He set it beside the first without ceremony and poured himself coffee from the pot she'd already made. She noticed he didn't ask. She noticed she didn't mind. The second file was older. Physical documents, some of them scanned, some original. The paper slightly yellowed at the edges. Your mother opened the wealth management account 11 years ago, Songin said. 2 years after your father died. Ivanka turned to the first page. The initial deposit was $400,000. It came from a trust your father established. The trust was supposed to distribute equally between you and Chloe at 30. She knew this. She had the trust documents herself. But there was a codicil added 8 months before he died. A secondary instruction. She found the page. The codicil redirected a portion of the trust's investment income, not the principal, just the income, to a discretionary account, managed by the surviving spouse, her mother. She's been drawing from it for 11 years, Songin said. That part is legal. Uncomfortable, but legal. Then what isn't? He turned to a flagged page near the back. The discretionary account had a co-signatory added 7 years ago. Ethan Cole, then her boyfriend. Not yet her husband. Ivanka stopped. She read the date again. 7 years ago, Ethan could not have known the scope of what he was signing on to. He would have been told something small, a formality, a favor to her mother, a name on a document that meant nothing. She knew Ethan. He would have signed without reading. But her mother had known exactly what she was building. In inheritance law, a codicil, a legal amendment to an existing will, requires only the same signing conditions as the original will. In many jurisdictions, a codicil added under undue influence is grounds for full contestation, and courts have overturned codicils as late as 14 years after a testator's death. She used him as a vehicle, Ivanka said, from the beginning. And when I married him, she had access to everything you two built together. Through him. Through the co-signatory arrangement. Songin drank his coffee. Chloe didn't know the full picture either. Your mother told her enough to make her useful. Ivanka thought about that. Chloe, who had always been the favorite. Chloe, who had grown up believing the favoritism was love. Who had been positioned and steered and flattered into doing exactly what their mother needed, without ever being told she was a piece on someone else's board. It didn't make Chloe innocent, but it made her smaller than Ivanka had thought. She forged my signature, Ivanka said, on 2 property transfers and 1 investment authorization. All 3 notarized through the same firm, a firm your mother has used for 15 years. Ivanka stood. She walked to the window. The city was properly awake now, morning traffic filling the streets below, people moving through their ordinary Tuesday with no idea what was being dismantled 14 floors above them. My father trusted her, Ivanka said. Songin didn't answer. There was nothing useful to say about that. He built something for us. For me and Chloe. She turned from the window, and she spent 11 years converting it. She looked at the files on the desk. 2 folders. 11 years of quiet, patient, methodical theft, conducted by a woman in a silver dress who had dabbed her eye at a fake anniversary speech and said you looked tired to the daughter she had been systematically dismantling. What did you mean last night, Ivanka said, when you said it wasn't just her? Songin set his cup down. Your father didn't die of a heart attack, he said. The room went very still. Ivanka looked at him. The official cause was cardiac arrest. His voice was careful. Even. But your father had a full cardiac workup 8 weeks before he died. Clean. No indicators. He paused. I've been looking at this for 8 months. There are questions the original investigation didn't ask. Ivanka stood at the window for a long time. The city moved below. Indifferent. Bright. Ordinary. She turned back to the desk and opened the first folder again. Her hands were steady. Show me everything, she said. Songin pulled a 3rd file from the case beside his chair. Thinner than the others. Older. He placed it on the desk but kept his hand on it a moment, not hesitating, just deliberate, the way a person handles something they've carried a long time. 8 years ago, he said, I was in London. A meeting that was supposed to last 2 days stretched to 5. On the 4th night, someone made a decision that wasn't mine to prevent. Ivanka waited. I was in a car. Different route than planned. The driver took a turn I didn't authorize, and I understood within 30 seconds what was happening. He opened the file. A single photograph, printed on plain paper. A street corner in what looked like Mayfair. Night. Rain on the pavement. The car stopped because a woman stepped off the curb directly into the road, without looking. Ivanka looked at the photograph. The woman in it was her. Younger, 18, maybe 19, her hair shorter, a coat she remembered owning. She was looking down at her phone. Completely unaware. The driver swerved. It gave me 3 seconds to get out of the vehicle before the people following us reached it. Songin tapped the photograph once. You never looked up. Ivanka studied her own face in the photograph. The oblivious angle of her head. The phone bright in her hand. You've been carrying this for 8 years, she said. I had your name by the next morning. After that it wasn't difficult to know who you were. That's why you came. He looked at her steadily. That's what I told myself. The bystander effect, the psychological phenomenon where people are less likely to help in an emergency when others are present, was first documented after the 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese in New York. But its inverse is equally documented. A single person who acts without hesitation can interrupt an entire chain of planned violence. She looked at the photograph again. Then she closed the file. You said last night that wasn't the whole truth. Yes. So, what's the rest of it? Songin stood. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, and looked at the city, the way a man looks at something he's been thinking about long enough that the thinking has become its own kind of weight. I started looking into your father's business 8 months ago, he said. Not because of you. Because of a shipping contract. One of my subsidiary firms flagged an irregularity in a freight corridor we'd acquired. The paperwork traced back to a company dissolved 14 years ago. He turned. Your father's company. Ivanka was still. The irregularity pointed to a third party who had been quietly extracting value from the corridor for over a decade. Someone who knew the original structure well enough to stay invisible inside it. He paused. Someone who had access to the internal documentation from the beginning. My mother. We thought so too. For 6 months we thought so. He came back to the desk. Then we found a second layer. He opened the thin file again. Past the photograph. A corporate structure diagram, hand-drawn on plain paper, the kind made in a room where screens weren't trusted. At the center of it, a name Ivanka didn't recognize. A holding entity, registered in Hong Kong. 14 years old. With a beneficial owner listed only as a set of initials. JKP. Ivanka looked at the initials. Then at Songyin. My father's initials were JHP, she said carefully. I know. JKP is not my father. No. Then who? Songyin sat down. He folded his hands on the desk. For a man who economized everything, this next pause was different, longer, weighted differently than the others. That is what I haven't been able to confirm, he said. And I don't move without confirmation. Ivanka looked at the initials on the page for a long time. JKP. 14 years. A structure built the year her father started showing signs of illness. A beneficial owner who had never surfaced. Who had let her mother run the visible layer. Who had let Ethan carry the legal exposure. Who had, for 14 years, collected from a distance. My father's cardiac workup, she said. 8 weeks before he died. You said it was clean. Completely. Who else knew about that workup? Songyin's eyes didn't move from hers. His doctor, he said. Your mother. And whoever your mother told. The suite was very quiet. Outside the window the city ran its ordinary morning, indifferent to all of it. Ivanka reached across the desk and turned the corporate structure diagram to face her. She studied it for a full minute. The layering. The distances built into it. The care of someone who understood that the best way to own something was to make sure your name was never attached to it. You've been building a case, she said, for 8 months. And you needed access to the domestic layer, the estate, the forged signatures, the accounts my mother controlled. She looked at him. You needed someone with legal standing to contest it. Songyin said nothing, which was its own answer. Ivanka sat back. She wasn't angry. The shape of it was almost elegant. She had needed him for the corporate structure. He had needed her for the domestic access. And somewhere underneath both of those things was a photograph of a woman stepping off a curb in the rain who had never known she'd changed anything. When were you going to tell me this part? She said. When I was sure you were ready to use it. And now. He looked at her across the desk. The files between them. 8 months of his work, 6 months of hers, and 14 years of something neither of them had yet fully named. Now, he said. The file arrived at 9:47. Not digitally. A courier, a young man in a plain jacket who knocked twice, handed Songyin a sealed envelope, and was gone before Ivanka had crossed the room. Songyin broke the seal, without urgency. He read the top page. Then he set it on the desk and turned it to face Ivanka without a word. She picked it up. A confirmation report. Forensic accounting, 3 pages, dense with figures. At the top, the beneficial owner of the Hong Kong holding entity, now confirmed. JKP, Yung Kyung Park. Below the name, a biographical summary. 12 lines. Ivanka read them once. Then again. Yung Kyung Park. 61 years old. Retired. Formerly a senior partner at a private equity firm dissolved 12 years ago. Born in Seoul. Relocated to London in his 30s. One known associate in the UK property sector. One known associate. The name beneath it was her mother's. Not her married name. Her birth name. The name she had used before she became Mrs. Park, before she had married Ivanka's father, taken his name, and become the woman in the silver dress who dabbed her eyes at speeches. Her mother's name was Park Ji-soo. JKP was her mother's brother. Ivanka set the page down. She didn't build this for Ethan, Ivanka said. She built it for him. Your uncle has been the architect of this from the beginning. Songin turned to the second page. Your father's company, the freight corridor, the codicil, the forged documents. All of it structured to funnel asset value out of your father's estate and into a holding entity that your uncle controls. He paused. Your mother was the inside access. Ethan was the legal buffer. Chloe was the distraction. Ivanka heard all of it. She sat with it. In South Korea, inheritance disputes involving undisclosed foreign entities are among the fastest-growing categories of civil litigation, rising 34% in the last decade as global asset hiding structures become more accessible to private individuals, not just corporations. My father knew him, Ivanka said. They were close. For years. Songin pulled the envelope back toward him and removed one final item. A photograph, physical, printed, slightly aged at the edges. He placed it on the desk. Ivanka looked at it. Her father. Younger than she ever remembered seeing him, mid-30s, perhaps dark-suited, standing outside a building she didn't recognize. Smiling. Relaxed. The posture of a man with someone he trusted beside him. Beside him stood a younger Kim Songin. Ivanka looked up. Songin's face gave nothing. But something behind it had shifted. Not softened exactly. More like a door that had been closed for a long time standing fractionally open. He was my mentor, Songin said. Before I was anything, your father gave me access to people and rooms I had no right to be in. He didn't ask for anything back. He looked at the photograph. He was one of 2 people in my life I have trusted without reservation. Ivanka looked at her father's face in the photograph. This man who had built something careful and generous, who had written a trust to protect his daughters, who had a clean cardiac workup 8 weeks before his heart stopped. He trusted Yung Kyung Park too, she said. Yes. And my mother. Yes. The word sat in the room, like something with mass. Ivanka turned the photograph over so her father's face was against the desk. She didn't want to look at his expression while she thought about what had been done to him. The investigation into his death, she said. How far can you take it? As far as it goes. That could implicate my mother directly. It could. She looked at the turned-over photograph. The blank white back of it. The ordinary nothing of a reversed image. Good, she said. Songin looked at her for a moment. Something in his face that was not quite respect because it was older than respect and quieter. He reached across and picked up the photograph. He turned it back over. Her father's face. Smiling. Trusting. The 2 of them, her father and a younger Songin, standing outside a building in the clean light of a morning that had no idea what was coming. I promised him nothing would happen to his family, Songin said. Ivanka looked at the photograph. He knew something was wrong, she said. I think he knew everything. I think he just ran out of time. Outside, the city went on. 14 floors down, people walked to work, bought coffee, made ordinary plans. The morning had no idea what was sitting on a desk above it. 2 folders, 3 files, a photograph of a dead man, and the shape of what had been done to him slowly becoming undeniable. Ivanka stood. She straightened the files into a neat stack, one on top of the other. Precise and unhurried. I want everything actionable by Monday, she said. Songin nodded. Then we should talk about your uncle. Monday came quietly. No dramatics. No warning sent. Ivanka had learned from the best. Her mother had spent 11 years moving in silence, and the lesson, at least, was worth keeping. She wore black. Simple, structured, nothing that required attention. She didn't need the dress to do anything tonight. She had other things for that. The venue was a private dining room in a members-only club in the city center. Ethan's territory, his choice, his attempt to control the geography of whatever conversation he thought was coming. He had called her twice over the weekend, left one voicemail, formal and careful, the language of a man who had spoken to lawyers. She had not called back. Songin had suggested neutral ground. Ivanka had said no. Let him have the table. Let him have the room. Let him sit in the chair he chose and believe, right up until the moment he couldn't. That location was the same thing as advantage. She arrived 7 minutes late. Intentional. Ethan was already seated. Chloe beside him. That surprised her for exactly 1 second, then didn't. Of course Chloe was here. Chloe had always gone where she thought the winning side was standing. Their mother sat at the far end of the table. Silver dress again. Different one. Same posture. Hands folded. Face composed into the particular arrangement of a woman who had decided that dignity was a costume she could still wear. Ivanka sat down. No greeting. She opened the leather folder she had carried in, removed 3 sets of documents, and placed one in front of each of them. Forensic accounting report, she said. Corporate structure of the Hong Kong entity. And a preliminary finding from a private investigator retained 8 months ago regarding the circumstances of my father's death. Her mother's hands tightened on each other. Just slightly. The only movement at the table. I've also filed a formal contestation of the codicil added to my father's will, on grounds of undue influence and fraud. Ivanka looked at her mother directly. The notary firm has already been contacted by my legal team. Given that they notarized documents bearing my forged signature, their cooperation has been, she paused, enthusiastic. Ethan looked at his copy, without touching it. Chloe touched hers. Opened the first page. Closed it. Forensic document examination. The science of detecting forged signatures can identify a forgery from pressure patterns alone. Modern analysis tools measure pen angle, ink distribution, and microtremors invisible to the naked eye, with accuracy rates above 94%. You can't prove intent, Ethan said. His voice was steady. He had definitely spoken to lawyers. The forged signatures establish fraud. The shell company structure establishes conspiracy. The bank transfer records establish your direct participation. Ivanka looked at him without heat. I don't need to prove intent separately. The acts prove themselves. This is... Chloe started. Don't, Ivanka said. Chloe stopped. Something in the room adjusted. The 3 of them felt it, the particular shift of a space when the person who holds the leverage makes it visible without raising their voice. Songin had not entered with her. He was in the building. She knew this the way she knew the documents were solid because she had checked, and checking was enough. His presence wasn't the point tonight. She was. Here is what happens next, Ivanka said. She turned to Ethan. You sign the dissolution agreement my lawyers prepared. Full asset disclosure. No contest. In exchange, I don't pursue the criminal fraud charge personally. The forensic accountant's report goes to the financial crimes unit regardless, because that's already in motion, and I can't stop it even if I wanted to. She let him understand that. But my personal complaint is the part that accelerates it. Without that, you have time to cooperate. Ethan's jaw moved. And if I don't sign, then I add the criminal complaint this week and your licensing contracts. All 4 of them, not just the one Songin Capital holds, get flagged simultaneously. She folded her hands on the table. Gerald already pulled his investment Friday morning. 2 of your other partners called my lawyer directly over the weekend. You don't have the runway you think you have. Ethan said nothing. She turned to Chloe. You're named in the fraud documentation as a knowing participant in the asset concealment. Whether that goes further depends entirely on what you choose to do in the next 48 hours. She paused. My lawyer's number is in the back of your copy. Chloe looked at the folder. Her face had lost the architecture of performance, stripped down to something younger and less certain, the face of a woman realizing she had been a piece and not a player for most of her adult life. Ivanka felt nothing warm toward her, but she felt something accurate. Then she turned to her mother. The room went very still. Her mother looked back at her with the steady, careful eyes of a woman who had spent 11 years making decisions she had never expected to answer for. No tears this time. No silver dress dignity. Just 2 women at a table with the truth between them. Jung Kyung Park flew to Singapore on Saturday, Ivanka said. His assets in 3 jurisdictions are already frozen, pending investigation. His lawyers filed an emergency injunction this morning. She held her mother's gaze. It was denied. Her mother's expression didn't break, but something behind it did, something small, load-bearing, that had been holding the rest of it up. You used my father, Ivanka said. Not loudly. Not with a shaking edge of something unprocessed. Just the plain, stated fact of it. You used his trust and his name and the time he had left. You used his company and his daughters and a codicil he was too sick to contest. She kept her voice even. And then you sat at his funeral and you cried. Her mother said nothing. I have one question, Ivanka said. And I want you to answer it honestly. Not for me. Because you should say it out loud at least once before lawyers make it impossible. The table was completely silent. Did you love him at all? Ivanka said. Ever. Her mother looked at her for a long time. Outside the dining room, the ordinary sounds of the building continued. Distant voices, a door closing somewhere, the indifferent hum of a city that had no idea what was being said in this room. Her mother looked down at her folded hands. She said nothing, which was the most honest thing she had done all evening. Ivanka stood. She gathered the leather folder, closed it, and tucked it under her arm. She looked at the three of them one final time. Ethan with his untouched documents, Chloe with her closed folder and her younger, stripped face, her mother with her hands folded over the answer she couldn't give. My lawyers will be in touch before Wednesday, she said. She walked to the door. Then she stopped. Not for drama. Because the thing she was about to say had waited long enough, and it deserved to be said standing up. She turned back to Chloe. You spent your whole life wanting what was mine, she said. You thought that meant you wanted my husband, my money, my position. She held Chloe's eyes. What you actually wanted was for someone to choose you first. I know that. A pause. I'm sorry our mother never did. Chloe's face did something complicated and painful and entirely unperformed. Ivanka turned and walked out. The corridor was quiet. Pale walls, low light, the carpeted hush of a building that hosted important conversations and kept them to itself. Songin fell into step beside her, without a word. He had been leaning against the wall 12 feet from the door, jacket on, unhurried, as if he had simply been waiting out a delay in traffic. They walked to the elevator. The doors opened. They stepped in. Ivanka looked at their reflections in the mirrored elevator panel. Her in black. Him in dark gray. The leather folder under her arm. The city visible through the lobby glass below, going about its ordinary evening. Well, she said. Yes, he said. The elevator descended. She looked at their reflections and thought about her father's face in a photograph, smiling, trusting, standing next to a man who had kept a promise to him across 14 years and an ocean and a debt that was never supposed to come due. She thought about a woman stepping off a curb in the rain in Mayfair, looking at her phone, not knowing she had changed anything. She thought about Monday morning and 4 frozen accounts and a dining room with 3 people still sitting in it. The lobby doors opened. The city came in, cool air, distant traffic, the wide, ordinary noise of 10 million people living their lives at full volume. Ivanka walked out into it. She didn't look back. Lovely's part 1 is done. Ivanka walked in as the woman they tried to bury and walked out as the woman who held the shovel. Drop one word in the comments that describes her. Just one. And if this story did something to you, you know what to do. Subscribe. Part 2 is coming, and I promise you, we're just getting started.